we share it? Let's actually make it public. So that if there are any followers on YouTube that we have, they will actually get a notification directly. So let it be a public event.
Then I have to. Equals. I think I'll have to go back and restart it then. मेरे को public event क्यों करना है दोस्त?
मैं वही बोल रहा हूँ, पब्लिक अगर होगा तो जो YouTube पे ऑलरेडी फॉलोअर्स होंगे उनको एक वो चला जाएगा नोटिफिकेशन.
कोई है क्या अपना?
है, थोड़े बहुत फॉलोअर्स हैं. See, I am just actually doing this to prep people up जो भी इनको आता है notification that we can go live here on YouTube also, and of course we will share it on Facebook. थोड़ा it will be a prep for the last day.
Okay, so it's on.
In fact, Madhu, before you end the session, when I ended the session yesterday, I spoke about the next 2 days. You should mention that we will actually be going live on YouTube. So while we will share the link on Facebook, but follow our channel so that you get notified also when we start on YouTube.
Yeah. And our channel is
IAC, Indian Association of Columbus.
No, but what is the exact name? How will they know?
If I actually go to YouTube
and just Indian Association of Columbus, we have that.
I'm just searching. 1 second. Yeah, if I search Indian Association of Columbus, the first video that comes up is Republic Day. Excuse me. And then I can go and follow IAC Columbus.
Perfect.
Our page is called IAC Columbus.
Okay, so I'm.
Oh, no, hold on. You should be the one searching, because when I open that page, because I'm logged in as myself and IAC, वो by default वो ले लेता.
So go to your home page, right, and maybe. So are you? How to
what?
So I'm already live on YouTube right now.
हाँ, तो उसके ऊपर एक share का बटन बना होगा ना. If you go there, it will give you a link to share. वो arrow बना होगा share का.
Hello, hi. Someone has already joined, I guess. Kavita ji.
Ankit, let it be. I found the stream now. I'll do that.
Okay. So you are seeing it, right? Okay. So you're there.
Ankit, you have the.
I'm following a YouTube stream on my laptop.
Ankit, you have the questions with you, right?
I have the slide to introduce.
No, the poll questions.
No, those. Where was it?
I have sent the WhatsApp. You want me to email you or something?
I'll create it.
Okay. So there are like hardly 3 or 4 questions.
Okay.
Hi.
Hello, Smita.
Hi.
All set?
Am I audible?
Yep.
Okay. I'm just going to switch on one more light just in case.
Yeah.
Okay. So what I need you guys to do is, you all are co-hosts. So whoever's going to share the presentation, I'll need you guys to just test once, and then we are good to go. Okay, so Smita and Madhu, you guys are the co-hosts. We already have one participant who's joined in, and we'll give folks if we're still 10 minutes away from 8 minutes away from going live.
Yes.
So people will be able to join in. We are not controlling their entry, so they might join in at any time. And you guys are live on YouTube and on the Facebook page also.
Okay.
So Smita, just one request: can you share your screen once so that
And it is shared.
yeah, we see it.
Okay, awesome.
So there's about a 20-second delay on YouTube Live here.
Mm.
I think that's okay. We can live with it.
No, I was just, it's probably the first time we are going live on IFC, so just wanted to kind of let you guys know.
Yeah.
Between Zoom and YouTube, I wasn't sure how long the delay is. Ankit, Madhu, sorry, I didn't catch. I didn't hear your conversation earlier. We're ready with all the questions and polls, right?
Yeah, Ankit is creating that poll.
Okay.
So we will give them like 5 minutes.
Yeah. So typically by 6:35 we'll get started.
Okay. No, for
what?
the poll.
So your 35 will start.
No, she is asking about how much time will you give participants to respond.
Oh.
I think about 30 seconds should be enough for a poll, right? It's just one question at a time, or are you saying 3-4 questions together, and that's why you need 5 minutes?
There are 4 or 5 questions, and of course, 30 seconds should be okay.
You will project one question at a time, right? So
No. It's all of them in a series. Just
then you can probably give about a few minutes. Yeah, then you're right. Sorry, I didn't know.
Madhu, check your WhatsApp.
yeah. We have people joining. All enthusiastic photographers.
That's awesome. It's 6:30.
Yeah.
So, Smita, just to let you know, we are live on YouTube as well, and people are actually saying hi to you on YouTube live. So you may wanna track that in parallel along with Zoom as well, just so that you're up to date on what people are saying there.
Oh, okay. Let me.
I'll send you the link right here on chat.
Okay, sure. Yeah, that would be good. Okay.
In parallel along with Zoom as well, just so that you're up to date on what people are saying there.
Right. Oh, okay. Let me.
I'll send you the link right here on chat.
Oh, I hear the.
Okay, sure. Yeah, that would be good.
On YouTube. Yeah. Hi, Alok.
Think you might have to switch it off because we are able to hear your video also.
No, she can probably mute that.
Sorry?
I said she can probably mute that. You mute the YouTube link on the bottom.
Yeah, mute your YouTube video. So
From the
otherwise, we
bottom.
are able to hear you twice.
Yeah. Just did that.
Whatever is comfortable. Now, Ankit, we have 23 participants. I think we need to start.
Madhu, can I suggest let's give people a couple more minutes. There were more than 100 participants who have registered on the
Sure.
form. So
Let's wait till 6:35 then.
Okay. Hi, Neelam. Hi, Janet. Hi, Chaitra. Okay.
Hi, Smita. Shakir here.
Okay. Hi, Shakir.
we're going to
Okay,
start.
Madhu. Yeah. So what I'll do is I'll give a quick introduction and then Madhu, I'll turn it over to you. So hello everyone. Good evening. Welcome to IAC's Basics of Photography workshop. We will have Smita and Madhu will talk more about her. So I just want to, I'm the admin for the Zoom, and so I just wanted to set up some ground rules. So our lead speaker today will be Smita. Madhu, whose camera is also on right now. Madhu, say hi. He's going to be the session moderator, and I'm Ankit Tarkas. I'm the Zoom meeting coordinator. So me and Madhu will be also monitoring the chat window as we go along. So just for everybody's information, the session is being recorded. So you should see the recording button or the recording icon away on Zoom, as well as we are live on our YouTube stream and our Facebook stream. Everyone who will be joining in will be muted by default. We've had good interest for this event, so let's hope more folks will join us. You can have your video on if you need to, but that's a personal choice. What we'll have is towards the end, we will have a Q&A session. So if you want to ask any questions, you can type your message in the chat window. So everyone, if you're having trouble, maybe you can raise your hand, but if you press Alt-H, the chat window should open up. And then if you would like to speak out your question, then you can raise your hands in Zoom. One of us, either me or Madhu, will be monitoring that. And we'll call out your name. You can turn on your video and your audio, and you can ask your question, right? So we have both the options. Yesterday when we did this, we had most of the folks who posted their questions on chat, and then the moderator would collect them and would towards the end they would ask the questions. So that's how we've done it. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Madhu. Please go ahead.
Sure. Okay, thank you. Hello, everybody. Very good to see a lot of enthusiastic participants in this first time of its kind in this photography session. Thanks a lot. Myself, my name is Madhu Bhaskar. I am IAC coordinator, and myself, I am enthusiastic photographer, and you will be seeing most of my footprint in most of the photographs of IAC and the videos and all that stuff. Today we have with us the guest speaker, Smita Mahajan, who is well known for her photography in and around Columbus. A brief introduction about her, for those who don't know. So what started as a hobby soon turned into a passion and finally into a profession for our today's speaker, Smita Mahajan. Smita has the interest in the field of photography ever since she was given her first camera, the humble Kodak KB10 film camera, and has been in love with the world of photography ever since. This IT engineer turned photographer, this IT engineer turned photographer had developed her knowledge base over the years by observing, studying, practicing, and attending a lot of workshops in India as well as in the US. She had worked along with the local photography business Urban Rhino Columbus for various photography assignments, including American weddings. She is a certified portrait photography from the New York Institute of Photography. She offers photography services ranging from weddings, family sessions, maternity, kids, newborn, headshots, and even under her own events under her own business that goes by the name of the Memory Box. So without further delay, I would hand over to Smita, and along with all the other people, I am also excited to know more about photography. Smita, over to you.
Thank you so much, Madhu, for the lovely introduction, and thank you, Ankit, as well. Also, I'd like to thank IAC for this lovely opportunity. It's really amazing that you guys have turned up the Summer Fest into a virtual Summer Fest this year, because everybody needs some kind of involvement these days. Like, it's just too much going on this year, and so it's really nice to have such events, and I'm thankful for you all to give me this opportunity. And hi to everybody who is joining in. I'm trying to keep a tap in between YouTube and in Zoom. So hi Priya, hi Sana. Awesome. So first and foremost, let's just congratulate each other because we have reached August of this absolutely dreadful year. We only have 4 months left, and that itself is a positive feeling. Okay, so I would say let's start on that positive note, and I can just start sharing my screen. Should I just start with the presentation, or are we waiting for something else?
I think we can start. We have waited. It's almost 6:40, so we can start.
We can start it. Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
So I'm just gonna start sharing my screen here. Okay, just please confirm if you can all see my screen.
Yes, we can.
All right, awesome. So this is the slide I chose to start with because this is something I believe in, and this is one particular phrase that I want to share with you all. So it says, you can look at a picture and never think of it again. You can also look at a picture for a second and think of it all your life. Now that's pretty profound, right? So when we think of taking pictures, we would of course want to talk about and make pictures that one can remember for their life, right? Especially in today's day and age, this particular phrase holds so much more value, I think, because there's just so much of visual content going on in the world everywhere. We see our Instagram, we see our Facebook, we see YouTube. It's just loaded with pictures. Pinterest, there's just standalone apps that are completely on the basis of pictures. And so I think if we as a photographer are given this opportunity or have this opportunity to take any picture, it has to have some meaning, it has to have some depth, and whoever is the viewer enjoys the particular photo. And even if the person can remember the picture for a few days or months or years, that would be a great achievement. So that's why I wanted to start with this particular picture, and I'll try and help you all think about how we can make such memorable pictures. So the basics of photography with IC. Okay, here is a list of what we will go through today, starting from like very basic guidelines to what to see, how we can observe and how we can utilize our power of vision and imagination to make good pictures, and how to deal with interesting compositions, and then getting a little bit into exposure, ISO, aperture, and the settings like shutter speed and all of that. Because I have done a certification in portrait photography, I would like, and that is my main forte. I love to take pictures for people, of people, and then I'll definitely mention a few things about photographing people, a little bit about posing and how to go about that. We will see how much we can talk about post processing. I'll touch some base there, and then I'll give you some general tips like overall but photography and how to approach that, and a few resources. Okay. So even before we pick up our camera and get mad about all the settings, because there are a ton of settings, there are a few things that we should remember, a few very basic things that will help us understand what we want to show, how we want to show. And because picture is like a visual medium, right? So it's uh, it depends how the audience is perceiving it. Your aim should be that whoever is viewing the image is happy or get some sort of emotion out of it. So, and not end up like being confused about, okay, what is the photographer trying to tell you? So these three guidelines here talk and try to simplify how you should approach towards a good picture. So the first one says a good photo has a clear subject or theme, right? As basic as that. Every picture will be about something or someone. That something or someone will have more characteristics that the photo will bring about. So when you are trying to photograph something, try and make sure that that particular subject, thing, or person is clearly visible and the viewer doesn't have to like search. The second one also focuses a little bit on the same thing, but it says, okay, now you know what your subject is, now you know what your theme is, but there might be a lot of things in your frame, right, that are not necessary. The viewer's eye would probably end up going in the corner of the frame where the subject is not. So you kind of defeat the purpose there, right? So a good photo, sorry, a good photo should focus attention on the subject. The viewer's eye should immediately be drawn to the subject, and viewer does not have to hunt or guess. This is called as emphasis. And emphasis, there are different aspects that have to be emphasized on that we will touch base on later in detail. Okay. Now the last one is a photo should simplify. Now, what that means is there shouldn't be any distractions in the photo. Say you know what your subject is, you know you got a good frame and everything, but there is a ton of just distraction in the background. Not just the background. See, when I take pictures for people, I suggest or I help suggest what kind of clothing should be there, what kind of location we would be going through. So when we talk about clothing, I would suggest to you know avoid distracting designs on the closing, because that particular session is for portraits, that particular session is for family. So there I would want to focus on the expressions, the eyes, the faces, and not, and the clothing would be secondary there. So anything that is distracting even in clothing is kind of a no-no. So you want to take care of all of these things, the distractions in terms of uh, framing, in terms of clothing, in terms of colors. Too many colors would also be distracting. Let's make it clean. Let's make the frame neat so that the viewer can just see and get, okay, this is what the photographer is trying to show, and this is what I'm seeing, and okay, this looks neat. So that's what the three basic guidelines to the pictures are. Now, this particular slide, I really would want everyone to understand, because photography is a visual medium, right? It's actually, it's like capturing the world around us. There's a lot around us. Like say, if two people live in an area and they see, they have a particular landscape that they pass through every time, and they both take a picture of that. Both the pictures would be same. I mean, it would be this, it would still be the same landscape, but it depends on the vision of these two people, how they perceive that particular landscape, what kind of angles they choose to take, what kind of small little details they observe throughout their time that they would spend there, and they chose to include in the pictures, will what make them differ from each other. So what this slide tries to tell is, it's your vision, it's what you observe that can bring out the best and show how unique you are in terms of capturing those details. The settings of the camera and everything, what gear you're using, all of that comes later, but it really depends how you can observe things and bring out the best and show it to them. Sometimes when we, this must have happened with everyone, that we scroll through Instagram or we scroll through whatever, Facebook or any visual platform that you choose to, and we're like absolutely stunned by some photographers and their work, because you would be like, oh my god, I see this thing every day, like almost every day, but I never thought of photographing it this way. This is what this particular slide is trying to see, that that person, that photographer observed something, when maybe it's a macro shot, maybe it's a really wide shot, it's a different angle of a very mundane thing, but they chose to see it differently. So let's all train our mind, our eyes to see these uh, differences, observe things around us, and we would, that will make us understand that one particular subject, even if it's a very tiny see thing, can still be seen from extremely different angles. Now you'd ask, what are these things that I can observe? What are things that I can pay attention to and like incorporate that in my pictures? Some of the things that you can pay attention at are, as listed in the screen here, is the direction of light. Where is the light source coming from? How much is the intensity of light? Is the light harsh? Is it soft? Now, if there's light, there has to be shadow. So, are you going to do you want to include that shadow in the particular frame? Do you think that's going to be interesting? Is it going to add any value to it? I can give you an example where, say, you made a lip smacking dish today, okay, and then you are like, I have to post this on Instagram. So you decide to take a picture. Now, what will you do? You would have your ambient light or light coming in from any bulbs in the room. You snap a picture and it would be nice enough, but do you want to stop there, or do you want to go a step further? You can think of putting it right next to a window if you don't have any other external light source, and see how the light direction is, see how you can move your plate, and see if that is enhancing the food item as such. How are the shadows coming in? Are they helping raise the quality of the picture and things like that? So that is one example, one day-to-day life example you can use. The others would be like if you're out on the street or wherever, you can observe things like lines. Leading lines is something that you would have definitely heard of, and how they impact the viewer when it's he or she is looking at the picture. They draw the eyes to where the lines lead, and then you can place a subject along the lines in the frame. Patterns, definitely, we all love patterns. They are everywhere. We just have to have that eye and see uh, and capture these patterns around us. Colors is another thing, how we can make interesting observations in nature, or if like we can come back to the food photo option. In terms of colors, say what if your dish is an orange, just for example, is an orange colored food item, you can use complementary color backdrop to make that orange color pop, or you can choose to go monochromatic, meaning in the same color shades, and even that would look like a neat picture. I would have a lot of examples to explain all of these points that I'm saying right now, and we'll come to that later. Then we can talk about action. So in bird photography, in wildlife, or even sports, action is very much there, and then and then you need to observe and decide how you want to capture that action. So what kind of a settings you would use? Do you want to do the panning shot wherein everything else looks like it's moving, but the main subject, which is actually moving, looks stationary? That's one interesting technique of photography. Or do you want to do the just like higher shutter speed and capture the bird flying with the wings like back sharp and all of that? Then emotion would be when you're photographing people or even animals for that matter, right? Why not? So these particular things you would observe and try and inculcate them in your frames. Also, this is one approach wherein you are trying to look at these points and put them into your pictures. But when you want to study photography, when you want to study like works of other great photographers, anybody that you follow online, look at any picture that you like and then try to deconstruct that particular photo. Try to see, okay, in that particular picture, where did the photographer choose to have the light coming from, right? Are there shadows, and how did the photographer make sure to include the shadows in the picture, and how are they enhancing or not enhancing that picture? What kind of line play is there? What kind of patterns or colors, actions, emotions? So I have, like, with trial and error, come to believe that uh, deconstructing a picture, trying to understand how someone must have created this picture, really helps you understand the psyche behind it. And then once you start seeing these things, it really gets easy. Like once you start seeing it, you cannot unsee. Once you start understanding and observing direction of light, you will always go back and do that, because now you know it, right? So that this is what this particular slide is completely about. Let's see what is next. We cannot at all not talk about light and shadow in photography, because it's really about just capturing light, and if there is light, there's shadow. If there's shadow, there's has to be light somewhere. Now, even before we get into the complications of using external light, what are the different light sources and how to use them, to use flash or not, like just like way ahead, let's see what we have and let's see what we can use, right? So let's make use of available light. By available light, I mean whatever you have in it. The most common available light source is a window, right? So after this particular slide, I have a series of pictures that I'll show that were all created right next to a window. I'll try and explain what went into making these and some of the other aspects of photography that can be touched based on by looking at those images. Okay, so let's see the first one. All right. Okay, so this particular shot was made at my client slash friend's place, and I did carry a lot of lights with me. I did carry a lot of like softbox, flash, and everything. But eventually, this shot was taken with just the window light. So this was on a table right next to the patio door, and she had a lot of thick curtains around it. So all that was done to achieve this particular lighting was the curtains were closed or just open enough to allow as much light as to hit the strainer and the bowl, right? Everything else. So there's a wall behind. There's, I think it's like orangish in color. I don't remember. Sorry, but there's a huge painting. There's a refrigerator right next to that wall near the patio door. But we don't want to show all of that because remember the guidelines, no distractions. I knew that I wanted this shot. I knew that I wanted to show the details from the flower going down in the bowl. But to make sure that this comes out impactful, I just wanted to make sure that everything else behind is dark as it can get. So what do? I just pull the curtains until like at the back of the bowl and then open it. So of course there's some trial and error involved. You take a few shots and understand where I need to stop and let the light just hit what I want to hit. Okay. Also notice the table, there were a lot of other things there, a lot of different napkins and other baking products that were removed because I don't want any other color element in the picture. This has to be as simple as uh, this as it is looking right now, and the viewers I should go exactly where I want it to go. So just going through whatever we discussed and how we can implement those here, right? Of course, you can use external lights and get the same shot, but it's really easy to use what you have with you, right? Okay, moving on to the next one. Again, this is like she's sitting literally on the floor. I asked her to look up to the window because what will happen if she looks down, right? If she looks down, the source of light is above her. The shadows will be cast under her eyes, under her, like even prominently under the nose and under the chin, and we won't see the features as sharp. Right now, we can see the jawline nicely, the nose and everything. Even the eyelashes are nicely visible. Also, notice if I try to frame it such that here there was nothing. If it was as pitch black as this particular section, it would look a little bit flat. By flat, I mean this would just, the hair and everything would just like blend in. Instead, if we have another light element behind, that really adds more interest to the picture. So that's why I chose to include this particular window as well in the picture. I'm also on the floor alongside dancing around to get the particular frame that I want. Okay, so this idea of making your subject face the light source is what also comes into play for like posing techniques. So depending on where your light source is, you would ask your, and where you want the shadows to fall, you would ask your subject to face that side, right? Now if this was a studio shot, you could have additional lights next to you fall down on the subject and tell them the same thing, like just look up towards the light because I want the light to fall a certain way on your face. Moving on. So again, same model, outdoors. Here, that the wall behind her is really like an old vintage building, tattered wall, adding a nice texture. and giving that nice bokeh. On her face, there was a lot of sunlight, but I just wanted to add some pattern texture element. I literally pulled off a branch from the palm tree next to me, held it in my left hand, the camera in my right hand, and just played around until the shadow reached the section where she already had the sunlight on the face. So again, just using whatever you have around, trying to create patterns, trying to create different uh, interesting visual elements to make normal pictures stand out even a little bit. That horrible makeup is done by me, so I mean, it just had to do something dramatic. Okay, so there it is. Anyway, okay, so this is from a pre-wedding session that I did early morning. The sun was just coming up. You can see some fog here. If this picture was just this much, like just this much frame, it really is like a regular picture. Now what makes a difference is like I stepped back a little. I tried, so when I'm posing somebody, you would try to move ahead, go closer, go back, see how much you can see in the frame. Is there anything interesting happening? So I took a couple of shots from close by them and then stepped back, and then I noticed that on this particular window there was a nice reflection happening right there, like so a silhouette as well right here. So I thought that was a pretty good uh, visual point to include. So now for me at least, this becomes a visual element than anything that's happening here. Also to include that, I kind of broke some of the cropping or whatever the framing rules. It's not a traditional like 5x7, 4x6 or whatever, but seriously, if there's something interesting that you can include in your frame, don't let these rules stop you. If you think that it's interesting and anybody you show it to will find it interesting, like for example, in my case, I would be bothered about this couple liking the picture. So they really loved it. So that should be okay. Don't worry about, oh, that was a rule and all of that. It's nice to break the rules sometimes. All right, moving on. So again, outdoors, this is a maternity shot. What again I'm trying to show here is the source of light. I tried to place her here. The sun was behind this side, and that is why you would see a nice highlight coming in on her belly. And then this is exactly what I wanted to show. So imagine other scenarios where you do not get, this is absolutely natural. I didn't have to do anything. I just had to make her stand or turn. You can guide them and tell them, okay, can you just turn a little bit this side, face towards me and all of that, and just use the natural light and direction, and then you end up getting good pictures. Now again, absolutely simple shot, but the light and shadow play, the shapes that are formed is just adding another visual element, interesting visual element. This one again, you would see that, I need to move this. Okay, you would see that from this point ahead, there's a lot of sunlight, and then from this point towards us, there's a lot of shadow. So I place them here. You get a natural silhouette against this beautiful location. So one of the aspects of framing is also that make sure you give a sense of the location where you are photographing the location, the clients. So this is done for that. Also including the beautiful arches and the architecture just made sense because we did drove quite a few hours to reach this particular destination. Moving on. Okay, so this is not an example of using available light. This is where you take that extra step and see how you can still achieve interesting patterns, lines, or you can create those interesting patterns for yourself. If you notice, I've purposefully actually added this here so that we break that monotony of using what is available and see how you can incorporate or think how you can make boring, low lit locations work for you. If you see here, it's actually a pretty dark scene. You can't even see what this building is and everything. There were two lights used here to light the subject. There's one softbox right here that is lighting her up. Then there's a flash behind her with a red gel that is somewhere around the second or the first step here that is throwing light behind on the building. So that I chose red because there's a red accent on her. And then what that light did was, which I hadn't expected myself, it spread through here and gave us this particular railings shadow in this manner. So it created lines again. And these lines direct you towards the subject. So yeah, making boring backgrounds stand up using what additional equipments you have. Again, this is by the way the Fort House in downtown Columbus. This is a Hamilton Ice Arena. This wall has a nice pattern on it, so I just put a flash there and then lit up the wall. So any moment there is a lot of light behind the subject, this particular subject would go dark and turn into a silhouette. This is obviously towards like almost the sun is just down, so it's really dark. So these were the examples for how you can use lines, patterns, observe light and make use of available light, and two examples without available light to make your pictures interesting. Now, the other aspect that you can think of is composition.
Smita, I just wanted to give a pause. Do you want to take the audience poll right now? Just take a quick break, maybe 30 seconds or 1 minute.
Sure, we can do that.
Just to gauge the audience.
Yeah.
Hello, everybody. I'm just opening up a small poll just so that to know the level of expertise with the audience, just so that Smita can. So you can see the questions.
Okay, yes, people are answering. That's nice.
Yeah. Maybe just a minute or two we can respond.
I'll just quickly check YouTube then.
Ankit, it does not go to the next question.
Madhu, you will have to end the polling. Only then you'll be able to pick the next question.
Oh, okay.
So right now, 82% have voted. Whenever you decide to end the poll, you can start.
Then it can go to the next one. Okay. All right. Got it. I think most of the people have voted. We'll end this and we'll go to the next one.
Okay.
So Madhu, you can share your results so that we had there.
Oh, all the this one. I think I'm ending this.
So you can share your results so that everyone can see.
Yeah. Now I'm. Most of the audience have are comfortable using the manual mode. Do you want to continue? Yes. So I am.
Go back to the second one.
How do I the question? Edit.
If you click on.
Yeah, I have given the third question. Okay. It's a mixed response.
Okay.
50-50. Okay, we're getting close. So 15, 16 out of 29 have voted, probably because most of other folks might not use Photoshop or Lightroom.
Yeah, yeah. I just
Yeah, yeah, but but
okay.
but but out of Photoshop and Lightroom, yeah, most of the people are using Photoshop. So
That's
yeah, I think we got the answers, right?
okay.
We
Yeah.
have DSLR and yeah, you got the, you might have got the response, right?
Yes, I did. I did.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, I'll let you continue.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks for getting in this feature. It's really helpful. It's pretty cool. I haven't used this before. So I just close this and start sharing again. Just a second. Okay, so thank you guys for filling in the poll. Now it was just to understand how to direct the flow of the workshop based on your responses, right? So thank you so much. And now getting back to where we were now looking at composition. Now composition in the generic uh, set of the world means how you arrange a set of elements within a given space of frame. It could also be applied to music or painting, and but we will talk only about with photos, right? So for us, it's a tool that allows you to focus the viewer's attention on your subject. How in the frame, how are you placing your elements that it becomes a very catchy picture. Now there are a lot of things, a lot of aspects, as you can see there's a huge list down there that help you uh, compose your pictures in a very interesting manner. The first and foremost and the most heard of is the rule of thirds. Then we will check a few examples of framing and how lighting and contrast helps, leading lines, color, repetition, motion, relative size, and focus. Again, I have tried that I include a lot of photo examples and then talk with the photo examples in the view so that it's just not one person just blabbering some content, but by using pictures that I've clicked myself or some example that I've picked up from the internet, I help explain all of these concepts. Okay, so let's see. Rule of thirds basically is dividing your frame into a grid. So, like if you draw two lines like this, like divided into three sections horizontally, three sections vertically, gives you a 3 by 3 grid with intersecting points here, 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 and here. Now, these are called as point of interest, and it is said that if you place your subject or the most important aspect that you want to show in the picture along these point of interest, that is the best way to make sure that your picture is received well, that the viewer's attention would go there first. Now I did some reading and tried to figure out how and why this particular rule came in, because I think this is the most famous uh, rules of photography that there is. So apparently this was first introduced or observed by a painter in like 17th century or sometime there. And then in his study of colors, in his study of light and shadows, he kind of observed that uh, the more audience reaction he was getting in where there was activity in these areas. So he I just don't remember the name, but that's the person who came up with this rule of third, saying that if you place your visual interest points here, that is going to be received well. We will see some examples and then we can talk more about that. Now, these two are from a wedding that I did. Here, if you see now, I've placed the ring here because that's what I'm trying to highlight, and then the ring, the groom's ring here. So both of the point that I want to show are along these lines, and then they get highlighted really quickly. When you have when you have a person in the picture, try and include the eyes at the intersection For landscape, it's a little different. For people, you'll remember that if you can place the line eyesight along these lines, that's pretty visually impactful. Let's see what happens in terms of landscapes. So here you see, if you break it like this, the tip is to place the horizon on one of the horizontal lines. You can either place it here or place it here, that doesn't matter. But if in this case the horizon is here, so you see more of the ocean or whatever this is, and then you get a sense of vastness, you get a sense of depth and everything, and then the sky is not a lot important here. But if you have a interesting sky with a lot of details and colors, you can place the horizon here, and the sky can be like all from up here, and then a little bit of water. So that's the pro tip here, that in portraits, place one of your subject's eyes on one of the points, or both eyes on the point. On the lines in landscape, place the horizon along one of the horizontal lines. So that's a quick tip there. Okay, so before even I go to the next, because you guys mentioned that most of you do use phones often for clicking pictures, and that's what I use as well. I mean, I do use my DSLR more often, but then the convenience of a phone, you really cannot, what do you say, ignore, right? The rule of thirds, I just stop my sharing first and then I'll try and explain. So the lines, the grid you saw, right? I don't know if other brand phones have this particular feature, but I use a Pixel, and if I switch on my camera, I'm just trying to show you here. I don't know if you can see, there's a grid that can be switched on. It's in the settings. I can say switch on or off the grid, and then like this is exactly like your rule of thirds. You can't see it. Okay, it's probably because of the light that I'm using. But anyway, the point is, some phones will have this setting to enable or disable the grid. It's just those lines that you saw in the rule of thirds picture, and then you can use that when you try and frame your pictures. So that is what I wanted to bring out. I'm just quickly gonna check. Let's go back. Now, coming back to the points of emphasis, right? We just spoke about rule of thirds. The other way you can emphasize is by framing. So as in this particular example, the guy who's just walking on the rocks is being framed by another huge rock. So that's one example. This was shot in Columbus. This is one of the installations for Exhibit Columbus, and I just sneak through there and try to use. You see this particular pattern. This is what this frame is. I just place the camera there and try to frame the subject. So that's how you can play around and see what you have around yourself. That is framing, lighting and contrast. Remember one thing, the eyes, like the viewer's eye is attracted to the brightest spot in the image. Okay, that's a fact. Now, when I was thinking about this shot, I knew I wanted something really suspenseful, dramatic, mysterious. Eyes, of course, do a lot of talking, so that I definitely wanted the eye to be in the most prominent spot in the particular picture. So there's just one light that I'm using to light this particular section of the face. The collar is held up just to give that mysterious look, and it purposely chose a black coat. Everything else is dark to add to the dark theme, to the mysterious theme, and only this spot is lit up because that's what I want to show, right? So light and contrast, or dark, is what you would, if you incorporate that, that's another point of composition that would make your pictures look really great. Even this one here, again, I want to show the belly. So this is again a night shot lit by another light source that's coming in from this side, a little behind her. This is similar to the outdoor shot, but that time the source of light was the sun, and here it's an artificial light source, but the same placing, and you get the same result, right? Okay. Emphasis through lighting and contrast, that was. Now emphasis through leading lines, right? We kind of spoke about this in one of the previous slides. Now just observe this. This line leads here, this line leads here. So I have two elements that are directing the viewer's eye towards the subject, and that's how you try to frame. Here again, like this is pretty visible light, like lines now, because these are structures. Even these, like the shadow is playing in here. Even these help you drive that they are going in that direction towards that path. And so that's how leading lines will help. In another shot here, these hands are coming together at this spot, which is what I want to show that the cake decorator is doing. This is another Exhibit Columbus installation that helps us guide to the subject. Now, pro tip, do not simply just find some leading lines and fire off a shot. Try to find the best camera angle to really highlight them. Now, in this shot, if there was this hand, I wouldn't have used this as an example. This really helps drive that this particular person is reaching out to something, and what is that something? Are these people throwing these beats? No points for guessing. This is New Orleans. Okay. Another visual example is this. Again, staircase, lines, driving our eyes towards the subject. So that was leading lines. Moving on quickly to repetition. Remember, we spoke about patterns. So yeah, whenever you have something repeating that makes for an interesting frame, just snap it. Motion, long exposure, night shot. This probably might be a bus because it's too huge. So yeah, emphasis to repetition and motion. So these are the various points that you can think of, utilize in your shots to make your compositions look interesting. Another one is relative size. Again, you can place your subject, one of the subject in the foreground. It doesn't have to be a person. It could be like in a landscape shot, you could have another, like a big rock or a tree in the foreground and a mountain in the back. And then you can give sense of scale also using the relative size. Imagine a huge waterfall and a tiny person in front of it. Even that's example of relative size and trying to give a sense of scale of that location. Another simple one is focus. I wanted the, what do we say, hair of dandelion, the strings of dandelions to be in real sharp focus and everything else to be blurred. So I'm putting in emphasis through focus on that particular subject, which is the dandelion. So that's that. Now, moving on to exposure. So basically what exposure is the overall brightness or darkness of a photograph. If you see here, as an example, you can have three values: underexposed, correctly exposed, or overexposed. What underexposed means is you can see your subject, but you can't really recognize all of the parameters in the frame. Like you don't know what this thing is because it's too dark in this area. Or you can, if you end up overexposing it, meaning you lose some details. Like if you see this particular spot is too bright to understand what are the details here. So this you would not do, this should not do, but try to get in the middle, have a balance in between how bright or dark the picture is. Now what technically exposure is, it's the amount of light that reaches the camera sensor when a picture is taken. Ahead we will see how the parameters like shutter speed and aperture affect the amount of light that fall on the sensor, and that's why you end up with either underexposed or overexposed, because either one of the parameters was too high or too low, right? The less light, the darker your photo will be. The more light that enters from your lens, the brighter your photo. As simple as that. Okay. Again, once I explain all this, I'll come back to showing some tips on mobile. Okay. Now, what are the points? What are the aspects that determine the exposure that hits your camera sensor. It is the aperture. Just remember aperture as the opening of the lens, or the diameter of the lens opening. Shutter speed is the speed that the shutter speed controls how long the shutter is open for, how much of a time did you give the camera to capture that particular scene. ISO is the sensitivity of the camera sensor. These two, aperture and shutter speed, is what mainly determines how much of light comes in, and once that image is recorded, you can then use the ISO to add more light to it. Now, talking about shutter speed, this is how long the shutter will be open. It is expressed as a measure of time, meaning in seconds. For example, 100 means that your shutter is open for 1/100 of a second. It's that slice of time, right? The longer the shutter is open, the brighter the photograph will be, of course, because you're letting in a lot of light for that much particular of time. And the opposite of it, like if you open it only for a smaller amount of time, then as you see here, 1/1000 helps to freeze the frame, and the more lower you go, this is just half a second, you can see motion. So shutter speed will determine two things: the light coming in and the freezing of the motion. At what point would you introduce motion blur? Is when you have lower shutter speed. So you have to take care of that. But if you're doing like sports or something, you definitely want to go a bit higher shutter speed to freeze the frame. Aperture, as I said, is the diameter of the lens opening. It's measured in f-stops. 1.8, meaning the entire aperture is open. A lot of light comes in. The exact opposite is f22, wherein the diameter is just slightly open and lesser amount of light comes in. Now this also affects your depth of field, right? If the aperture is smaller, meaning you're at f22, the opening of the lens is like this small, that means you would end up with larger depth of field. What depth of field means is from this point to this point, everything else is in focus. So that happens when you have smaller aperture. But when you have a larger aperture, that means the lens is pretty wide open. Only a part of your subject where you're focusing on will be sharp in focus, and everything else will be blurred. Before I go to ISO, I can quickly show you something. Okay, so we were talking about aperture, right? Okay, can everyone see me again? So when they say the opening of the lens is this, can you see a small opening here? Yeah. So now the lens is pretty wide open, and a lot of light is going to come in. Okay, this is like the low. This is at f1.4. This is an 1.4 lens. So at f1.4, this is how open the diameter is, and this will allow a lot of light to come in. And then slowly, this is f22, wherein a very small opening is there, and a lot of and very less light is going to come through. So that is basically what aperture is. When you move your settings in the camera, that is what actually happens in the lens. That it opens and it closes and determines how much amount of light is coming in and out. Now, again, if you can't see me, that's fine, but you can go home and do this. Open, like detach your lens and play with the shutter speed. First, you can go through a very low shutter speed. Say I'm right now keeping it at 1 second maybe, and then see. So that amount of time, the shutter, this particular mirror flaps up and lets the light sit on the sensor. If you really go to a higher shutter speed and see, you'll hear a really quick shutter sound. See, so that is what, like that was just that much amount of time that the shutter was open and only less amount of light would enter. So you can play with your camera, see how it actually works inside, and you will get an idea of what's really happening instead of just like studying definitions. Talking about mobile, again, nowadays in every camera app, there's a slider which helps you adjust the exposure of the picture, right? If you tap on a point in the picture, it will turn bright or dark, and then you can do the slider up or down to adjust the light in the image. Now try this. Point your camera at any particular frame and then tap at the brightest spot and see what happens. The camera will try to adjust the light, and what the camera understood is that you want to make sure that that particular point that you tap, you want to have in more detail. So it just adjusts everything else and plays with the light to show you more details at that particular spot. So if you want to reduce the light in an image, tap at the brightest spot. If you want to increase the light in that particular image, tap in the darkest spot. Try this and you will understand that the phone cameras are also super smart these days. So I just wanted to point out that there are exposure sliders in your cameras these days, and it will play along with you as you tap and show the desired exposure that you want. Going back to the presentation. Now, ISO. So we saw two parameters that determine the amount of light entering in and how much the sensor captured. After that, if you want to increase or decrease the brightness, this is what kind of comes into the picture. This is ISO is how sensitive your camera sensor is to the light. It's expressed as a number. Higher the ISO number, the more sensitive your camera will be to light. At ISO 1600, this is high sensitivity. You will use this when there is low light, right? Say it's getting dark and you tried all your settings. You did your aperture is at 1.8. The lens is wide open. You're letting as much light in. The shutter speed is as low to again have a lot of light in come in, but still the image is dark. What you do, you would raise your aperture to a higher, ISO to a higher number, telling the camera, okay, please brighten this for me, and that will do the job for you, as you can see in this particular example here. Then again, ISO 100, low sensitivity, good for bright conditions, static scenes. The one thing that you would want to notice, or I mean remember with ISO, is that it's a setting that happens later on, right? So it's like a what do we say, adjustment that you make. So when you try to increase the ISO, it will try and bring out some details in the darker sections. And this was dark, it's trying to add some light there. Now there was never any detail in that particular spot. It's just trying to brighten it. What will happen is because there were no details present there, it will try and compensate that with grain, with noise, as we call it. So you might want to check that if you raise your ISO a lot, it will include a lot of grain in it. Now we are always afraid of grain, like, oh, this is too grainy, let's not go too much with that ISO. But I think there's nothing to be afraid of, because if you remember film photographs, right? When we see older pictures, we all still love them. They Most of them are pretty grainy, but we still love them. So the moral of the story is the picture matters. The grain is really like not that much of an issue. So you should be able to get away with a lot. And in post processing, you have things like noise reduction that you can do to reduce the noise or the grain in the image. It's already 7:30, so I'm trying to go ahead. All right. Aperture. So again, this is a chart which helps you understand in one single frame. At f32, the subject and the mountain both are in focus. At somewhere around f16, f11, you realize that the mountain is losing the focus, and now everything else behind the person is blurred, and only the subject is in focus. Similarly, what happens when you play with shutter speed is what is displayed here. At higher shutter speed, you would have a freeze frame, and here you would see a lot of motion. Like at half a shutter speed, or even don't be afraid to go to 2 seconds, 3 seconds, 4 seconds, you can actually see the motion. Like uh, like in the picture we saw at emphasis through motion, uh, we saw the bus train as a long exposure. Again, ISO sensitivity, you can see it's brightening up, but it's adding a lot of noise. So that was about ISO. Now, my favorite topic, photographing people, right? So, as opposed to other things, when you're photographing people, you know that the center of your interest is that particular person. So you would want to frame it, you would want to focus it, you would want to light it in a way that you show the best of that particular person. Not necessarily the best, but try and tell something about that person, right? This particular picture is of my grandfather-in-law, and just love the character in his face and his eyes and everything. I'm just thankful that he agreed to sit in front of my setup. Anyway, coming back now, some points to remember when you're photographing people is give importance to the expression, the emotion of the moment, and be ready to capture it. Say you're at a party or at weddings where not all of these settings are in your hand. You cannot really move things. You can't really tell people to, okay, stop, then I'll click a picture. People just want candid pictures. So you have to be ready for them. So give importance to those movements, be ready with your settings, like uh, and be comfortable with your camera so that you can be able to capture those moments. If possible, in some scenarios, you can interact with the subject beforehand to understand the subject better so that you know some aspects of that personality that you can bring out. Right? If you want to go a step further, study posing techniques for different subjects. I am studying this, and there is so much to learn. It's just insane. And techniques like this, like posing and lighting, they really help you elevate the subject, their features, and just bring out the best. Let me see. Okay. Before we go to the next slide, I'll just give you some quick tips. Okay. So we were talking about posing, right? I'll just give a quick few tips about how simple things that you can keep in mind for photographing even yourself. Like this, these will apply even for selfies. So that's a good thing, right? Remember this, that whichever point is nearer to the camera, that is going to be the largest. So for example, if I am photographing myself using my own phone or whatever, if I am keeping it here, this is the phone, and I'm like this, the first thing that comes in contact is the nose. So my nose is going to look bigger. Similarly, if the camera person is in ahead of me and I'm standing like this, my arms are going to look bigger. I know it's a huge issue with a lot of people, so I will mention a few tips on what to do about that. Now, we cleared the point that whatever is closer to the camera is going to look big. So now you have to pose yourself in a way that you do not bring that in front. What do I mean by that? Say I'm sitting on a chair like now, and I do this pose or I do this pose. That's a no. I tell you why. Because this is longer. This is like the bigger part. Instead, you would always do this. So include your pinky finger in front. That's fine because that's smaller. So that doesn't distract. But you can't be like this because this is going to look huge. See what's, you can even see it on the screen right now, right? So think of what you're showing. These are some posing tips that you can keep in mind. Another thing is, when you're standing in front of the camera, if you want to look thinner, imagine lines across your body, like from this point of my shoulder to this point of my shoulder. If I draw a line, it's this wide, okay? But I don't want to look that wide. What do? I just tilt a little. Now the line has gone from this width to this width. So that's another trick to just adjust yourself. You can tell the subject to like, okay, now move a little bit this side. So that will help you look thinner and so on. Another, like you said, arms, right? People are always very concerned about the arms and how that would look a little blown up. So that happens just because when they stick against our skin, the skin will obviously like spread. So you would always want to keep some distance, and then now it looks thin. This probably everybody knows this particular trick, right? Another one is where to place your hands. How to place your hands is you would always want to avoid right angles or like stiff straight hands. Try and bend the elbows. Make sure there is some kind of an angle in the arms. Again, see how lines play an important part even in posing, right? We have to give importance to these aspects which help you pose someone better. So that's one thing that I wanted to mention. Another is angle, right? What would you do if you're photographing kids, right? It doesn't help to stand up at your height and then photograph kids, because you are not showing them in the complete frame, right? The height is not going to be seen, the features are not going to be completely seen. So with kids and pets, you should make sure that you come down to their level, their eye level, and take the shot. Another aspect is groups. What do you do with groups? How do you pose them? You would have to uh, pay attention to the heights, try and make a wave and not just like one slant line or something. Try and make something that is eye pleasing. You can do layering in the shots and so on and so forth. This topic can go endless, so I will go ahead. Okay. Uh, Share screen again. Let's see what's left.
So just as we're slightly over time,
Yeah.
but I see a lot of enthusiasm and I see really informative, really the session informative. So I'm assuming the participants should not have any problem in extending this by a few more.
Got it. Yeah, I think I just have a couple of slides left, and I'll try and rush through it so that we have enough time for even the Q&A, right?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you guys for sticking through. Okay, so post-processing, right? So I'll try and quickly rush through this. So we spoke about how you can think of things that you want to do even before you pick up your camera. Think about composition, think about lines, think about colors, what are you going to use and everything. Then we came to how you can what you can do with the camera, the exposure, ISO, and everything. And now is the step wherein, okay, you got the pictures, you came back home, what do you want to do about it? If you are comfortable editing them, great, because that, like, I believe editing really enhances or has the ability to take your pictures from what you click in the camera to a really extended level. Because nowadays with whatever we have available options from, say, Lightroom, Photoshop, GIMP is another free open source software that you can use, Snapseed and Lightroom mobile for the mobile phones, or even just your simple Instagram filters, right? So there's so much you can do. You can beautify the images even further. Now, why is this important? I'd like to mention is this one particular documentary on Netflix where every episode is features different artists, and they tag them to like climate change related uh, topics every episode. There's this one photographer who's really senior. He started off with films, and now he has had to move on to digital. So he's explaining, while he's taking a shot of a beautiful landscape, he's explaining the transition and why he thinks, like, some of his friends were like, this the kids these days are, editing the pictures to another level. That's not right. That's not ethically correct or whatnot. But there are some opinions. But there's something that he said that really stuck with me, and I really believe in that. And this is what he said. He said, the scenery is in front of everybody, right? Everybody can click a picture. You have cameras, you have mobile phones. It's not difficult nowadays to take a picture. But when you go back home and what you do with the picture and enhance it to your liking or to your vision is what is going to make it yours. So again, the vision, the imagination, the observation that we had in the beginning of taking the picture is something you can now even do in post processing and make that picture into your own style. So that is also really an amazing point, which I feel is that brings out the importance of editing. So I personally love it. I have been using Lightroom first because I was really afraid of Photoshop, but now I only use Photoshop because I really love it. There's a lot of things you can do. Then there's GIMP, which is a free. You can try this out. It's a free open source software, and it has a lot of features. So you should definitely check that, because I know Lightroom and Photoshop is a paid version. I currently use the Adobe Creative Cloud $9.99, like $9, $10 a month package. Now, then Snapseed for mobile is another application that you can use for editing. I really like the way they have made that. And Lightroom mobile is what I have on my mobile, because um, I would want to have those features of changing my ISO and shutter speed and everything in the camera itself on the mobile. The Pixel camera doesn't have that in its native app, but Lightroom mobile has a camera in that app that I can change a lot of settings from. Also edit them. Also, it is paired with my Lightroom desktop version, so I can just share images and everything. So that makes it really, really very easy. For Snapseed, so for the whole post processing thing, I'll say this, that uh, there are so many things that we can change in terms of the exposure, the shadows, the clarity of the image, the vibrance, the saturation. Throughout all of these applications, you can do all of these particular settings. You can change. They're just in different layouts, so you just have to find them. But pretty much all of the applications help you edit it the way you would do it in Lightroom or Photoshop. It's just that because they are desktop versions and they're nicely laid out and they have been there from like ages now, and they've been developing a lot over the years, they are more prominent with their features. But yeah, Snapseed is within Snapseed, they have their own tutorials wherein like how to do this, how to do that, so you can just go through them. And I will mention somebody who you can follow on Instagram who is really amazing with like day-to-day pictures and his observation skills, and he himself puts out a lot of tutorials for how to edit in Snapseed. Okay, now coming to just general tips. Pick up the camera and practice. Cannot mention this enough, because you can go through a lot of YouTube videos, you can do a lot of seminars, but it definitely comes to just picking up the camera and practicing. So that you should definitely check out. Study behind the scenes of photographs to understand how the shot was taken. This is very important. Like I said, try and deconstruct an image to understand how it was taken. If you can get access to some behind the scenes or some shots, you will get an idea of where the light source is, how the subject is placed, in which direction and everything, and you can understand how the shot was taken. In Instagram, there are some pages which are dedicated to just showing behind the scenes shots of photographers. Like a lot of photographers just share their own BTS, and these people feature those BTS pictures, so you can see how they were taken. So those are very helpful. Start with auto mode, but don't be afraid to switch to manual. Like seriously, I'll give you one tip here. Super simple. If you want to take a picture in auto mode, note down the settings, go to manual, feed them yourself, take the picture. You will get a satisfaction of taking one picture in the manual mode. But you can then, from there on, you can just play with the settings and then change them to your liking and see how it goes. You already know the association between the different settings, and it's really not that scary. Just make the switch and you'll not regret. Read the camera manual. Most answers are definitely there. I have really like gone back to manual to get a lot of my answers, and it really helps. Join your local photography club or group, talk about photography, interact. It really brings out a lot of information like you didn't even ask for. Like cannot just mention how important this is. We do have one in Columbus called Columbus Viewfinders Group. They meet once in a month, I believe, and they have different topics every month, so you can join that. All right. So like that, 7:50. Oh my god. So sorry to take your time, but thank you so much. Thank you a lot for sticking through, listening to me. I hope I helped even a bit. That would make me happy. So yeah, thank you.
Sure. Thank you very much, Smita. This was very informative and one of the best photography sessions I have ever attended. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
We will spend like a few minutes just to address a couple of questions from the audience. The
Yes.
first one is from Pragya Tiwari. Tips to encourage, yeah, YouTube. Yeah, so Pragya Tiwari has posted this question on YouTube. Tips to encourage clients and keep them interested or create the right mood or emotion.
Okay.
Is that a question, Pragya? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Tips to encourage clients and keep them interested.
Okay, that's a good question, Pragya. So, like I mentioned, right? I mentioned before that if you can talk, if you can, I mean, I will tell you that try and convince the client to talk beforehand. Ask them a certain set of questions. If they have any preferences in terms of location, if there are some pictures that they really want to take, like I always try to get a list of shots that they really really want, and then the rest I can suggest. But and the thing is, only when you ask these questions is when the person knows that, oh yeah, maybe I should think of that, that's a good idea, I'll go back, I'll discuss with my family, and then we can come back with something. If there are kids involved, and you can always make sure that you include something that the kids like. I always tell them to get something from their own home that is precious to the kids, that they can bring along and feel a sense of comfort in the shot, and not like, who is this stranger just taking my picture steps. So interact, try to understand the client. Be Everybody is really friendly. That is, just don't be scared to ask questions. That is what I would say.
Great.
Yeah.
The next one is how to avoid burn with phone flash.
How to avoid
Burn with phone flash. Maybe I guess they're asking that, like in the phone we don't have a way to control the level of intensity of the flash.
yes.
Either it will be underexposed or overexposed if you use the flash. So is there any way to control that? Maybe
That's a good question. So the way you would act, any flash which is like directly pointed on the subject, even like for now, I have a light right here which is like on my face, and you would see some burn on my skin here and here. So that's because it's like right at me, and that's harsh light. So what you would do is, like, even right now, if I can demonstrate, uh, you can just use something white, translucent, to like cut the light a little bit. Now this is too much of this thing, but then this is the phone, this is your flash. You can probably just put some translucent thing here and try and make the light a little less harsh. That's what I would say you can do in terms of. And don't. So it's going to be tricky with the flash and the phone in the same device, because I was going to say don't point it directly, but if you want to keep that frame, you really can't do that. So I think the only thing is, without messing with your camera, if you can try and get a modifier, they say, to just make it a little bit less harsh. Maybe move a little back from your subject, so it's not like directly on the face hitting. Right? I hope I gave a little bit of an idea.
Yeah. Right. Thank you. The next one is, for a typical photograph, how much time do you spend capturing the snap versus editing it?
Okay, good. Capturing the snap, second, faster shutter speed. But editing, I spend quite some time because I really, really love that. And what happens is, with editing, with capturing, you know where to stop. Like the subject is not going to wait for you for hours. They're going to get pissed off and leave. But with editing, you are your own with the image on your laptop at your home. You have all the time in the world. There's nobody stopping you. But the thing is, you have to know where you want to stop, because what happens is, sometimes I would edit for a few minutes or hours. Then I'll be like, okay, I think I'm happy with it. Go back to another one. After some time, when I come back, I'm like, not happy. I probably might do it again. So try not to do that. There are things that they call something like batch editing, meaning use same edit or same settings for all the shots to edit so that they all look consistent. So you don't get carried away with, okay, one picture I'm going to edit the way I want, another picture I'll just like play around in the shorter span of time that I can. So to answer your question again, for capturing it is really small unless it's like a styled shoot or a planned shoot or a portrait that I want, like that I've thought that okay, I want this particular costume, I want lights here and there. So that is gonna take time. I have done portraits like that at my home, making my husband my model. That has taken a lot of time because I really want that shot to come the way I imagined it. Uh, so placing the light, thinking how the light will work, getting the costumes right, and everything takes time. In that case, in fact, in those scenarios, editing takes lesser time because you spend so much time getting the shot right in the first place that you would spend less time editing because it's already there what you want.
Got
But
it.
this luxury you don't get in weddings or client shoots as such.
Got it. Thank you. Then Murali Krishnan is asking which Instagram handles are you referring about?
Yeah, I think I have a slide of that. My screen is still sharing, right?
Yep.
Yeah, so this particular person, probably a lot of people already follow him, Audi Photography. His name is Aditya Venkatesh. He's an amazing photographer. He now does mostly with mobiles, like he does a lot of mobile shots, and he mentions, okay, shot on mobile. He does a lot of, because of he has such a great fan following and his work is so amazing. People have been asking him to show, like put up tutorials of how he achieved that. Like really, the point I was mentioning, right? Like small things, silly things that you have always seen around you, but you would see his shots and you'll be like, oh my god, why didn't I think of that? That's such an amazing shot. So that this is the Instagram handle, Audi Photography, and in his IGTV section, you can see the tutorial that there are some Snapseed tutorials as well. And in his highlights, there are a lot of things you can go to in his highlights. He does post a lot.
Thank you. And the next one is where to practice shutter speed, shutter priority, and aperture priority modes versus manual mode. This is a question on YouTube from Sandeep Ramgirwar.
Okay, where to practice?
Yeah. Where,
Okay,
yeah.
yeah. So you can start with the choice of choosing when to do shutter priority and when to do aperture priority. This is for portraits you can do aperture priority. So you can, because you know most of the portraits you would want like the person in
Okay.
focus. Everything else does not really matter that much. So there is what you can. So you know that you want to use f1.8 or 2.8. You set that, and the camera does the rest. So you don't have to worry about that in aperture priority. Shutter priority is again same, that you set the shutter speed, that you know that you want to approach something that is a long exposure, or you want to capture either blurred motion or you want to capture a slice of the motion. You set the shutter speed and let the camera do the rest. So that's when you would do that. But I think his question is where. So again, this will be based on what subjects you choose. Excuse me. The shutter speed one you would probably want to practice on, like maybe next to the road, just the vehicles passing by, or on birds if you have access. For the aperture one, you can do on portraits. That's fine. And then when you have a, I would say go directly to manual mode. Do not be scared to go to manual mode. It's not that scary. Like seriously. Another point I think I did not mention throughout. What really helped me was that there's an inbuilt um, light meter in the camera, and that everybody must have seen. It's a scale which is like 0, -1, -2, +1, +2. Use that as your guide. That is, if the pointer is at 0, that means your exposure is correct. And then whenever you move your shutter speed or aperture and everything, you would see that slider will move. Ideally, you would want it to be at 0, so it's kind of correctly exposed. So when you go to manual, just keep your eye on that, that you want to get the exposure at the scale at the 0, and that will help you guide. So play with that there, because what used to happen with me was whenever I used to go on manual, blank, like the shot is just dark. So I was probably messing up a lot with the shutter speed and not thinking of other parameters. So that scale really helped.
Good. This was how many years ago?
Not 4 or 5 years ago. And I was so mad. I was like, why didn't anybody tell me this setting?
Yeah.
It took so much time to, and then when you know it, you're like, oh,
Got it.
yeah.
We have a couple of more questions. Maybe this two or three more. After that, we can call it off.
Sure.
One request was, would you mind sharing the presentation slides?
Yeah, I think I have the ability to like download it in a PDF, so I can just share the PDF. Whom do I share with? Like, I can share with you.
To ISC, and ISC can forward the same presentation to whoever have like registered.
Yeah, if you have registered on the list, I can share it as a PDF. I can mail it out to everybody.
Sure, sure. The next one is Smita. What type of lenses we should use for portrait? In outdoor and indoor. Is there any specification like that?
Outdoor and indoor, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So the most affordable lens that I started off with was 51.8. That because of the aperture, like 1.8 is a nice, even 2.8 is nice. It gives you a nice bokeh background blur effect that is nice to start off with. It's not really a portrait lens. The typical portrait lens they say are 85 or 7200. I do not own an 85 so far, but I do have a 7200 that I cannot use indoors because right now I live in an apartment and it's too like you really have to be far off from the subject to be able to use that zoom lens. It's a telephoto. But I use only and only that lens for portraits now when I'm doing it outdoors. Especially now, social distancing, I have to be really far off. So I can use the 70-200 2.8. The one I have is from Tamron because that Tamron is affordable. Nikon is really expensive. I have a Nikon D750 by the way. So yeah, for portrait 70-200 is the ultimate one. But again, don't let this stop you from like, okay, I don't have this lens, I can't practice portraits. I have only moved on to this lenses very recently. So it's not something that should stop you. And you can always blur in the editing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good. Thank you. The last one is how to avoid blur or grainy shot indoor with low light.
Good one. So yeah, indoors there's definitely not a lot of light. We would assume that we don't have any external lighting like external flash or a softbox or something like that. But you still want nice pictures without the grain, right? So I would say use window light. If it's not daytime, it's night and you have to take the picture in the night, what can you do? If you are using a DSLR and like you have the inbuilt flash, again, the way we spoke about modifiers, right? So you must have seen these DIY techniques of just putting a flap or a paper here so that the light bounces off up and not directly on the subject. So the point is to introduce some more light somehow and compensate for the grain. So you could use your inbuilt flash, but just use you can just Google DIY tricks to use your existing flash as a modifier and then put a paper or a cardboard and then sometimes they put like a plastic or something translucent, something that can just make the harsh light into some softer light. That is one. If you do have a flash or something of a light, LED light or whatever, or a lamp, try to bounce it off and use. Like what happens is when you normally we would have white ceilings. If you can bounce the light off of that, what the reflected light coming is much softer than a direct harsh flash. So, yeah.
Nice. Good. I think with this we are almost end of the session. First of and towards the end, Smita, thank you very much. Appreciate all the time and appreciate the time you have put in to prepare this presentation. As soon as ISC approached you, you were kind enough to agree, accept this, and we had a wonderful and very informative session. And also, I feel the audience as well were very much enthusiastic and have found this session useful. Thanks a lot, Smita.
Thank you so much, Madhu, for all your help and coordinating this with me and making me feel comfortable. I hope that everybody else feels the same as you, that at least some of this was informative. And also, do not feel hesitant to reach out to me for any questions. I love talking to all of you, so I can like always help you. This was one slide that I had posted some of the uh, like resources. So again, you would get that in a PDF, so that's fine. And yeah, these are my contact details, and you can reach out to me anytime. This is for all the participants. So thank you so much for listening to me for 1.5 hours. This was fun. I was looking forward to this, and this is going to be a really good memory for me. And thank you, IIC, once again for this opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Ankit, you want to say a few words, or are we done?
We're okay. We're done. So what I'll do is, once Smita, you send me the presentation.
Yes. I will, after we log off, I will download the PDF and send it to you.
Ankit, this is. Can I just quickly add something? Last 10 seconds.
Yes, please.
For everybody who's with us today, just wanted to let them know we'll have the Zumba workshop tomorrow at 6:30, and then the grand finale on Saturday on YouTube Live. So please let your friends know as well, just to make sure your friends are not losing out either.
Cool. Awesome.
Okay, good.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you
Have a
so
great
much.
evening. Thank you.